The call came at 2:14 in the morning. Not from him. From her. Kendra. My father's caseworker. Technically a recovery liaison. But she always spoke like someone who had forgotten how to hope. He's ready, she said. He asked for you? I sat on the edge of the bed, phone to my ear, heart somewhere between my knees. And if I say no? She paused. Then I call an ambulance. And he gets dropped at a public detox with a 48-hour hold and no bed guaranteed. You're not his only option, James. But you might be his last. I hadn't seen him in 3 years. Not since the last time I drove him to rehab. The last time he swore he'd stay. The last time I sat in a parking lot for 3 hours while he checked in, and then walked out the back. That time, I told him we were done. And I meant it. But the thing about saying, "We're done," is that you never expect them to actually disappear. You expect them to fight. To call. To show up drunk at your door at 3 a.m. and slur, "I'm sorry," through tears that might even be real. But he didn't. He just left. Like quitting me was easier than quitting the bottle. I said yes. I don't know why. Maybe because I wanted to look him in the eye again and tell him what he cost me. Maybe because I didn't want the guilt if he died in a detox hallway, shivering under fluorescent lights with no one to remember him before he became this version of himself. Or maybe because part of me, some ugly, flickering part, still hoped he'd try. The drive would take 10 days. Pennsylvania to Arizona. Rehab center in the desert. Final shot, according to Kendra. Top tier. Intensive. No excuses? He can't fly? I asked. No. He's not stable enough. He needs someone with him. Someone. You. I told Claire the next morning. She didn't say anything for a long time. Just nodded. Sat down. Sipped her coffee like it might help her figure out how to say the things she didn't want to say. Do you need to go? She asked finally. I shook my head. No. But I'm going. For him? I didn't answer right away. Then. For me. He was waiting outside the halfway house when I pulled up. Same coat. Same boots. Same shoulders hunched like they were hiding something that had already left. He didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just picked up his duffel bag and opened the passenger door like he was getting into a cab. I didn't say hi. He didn't say thank you. We just started driving. 20 minutes in, he finally spoke. You got a different truck. I nodded. The old one died. Shame. That one had good bones. Didn't know you cared. Didn't say I did. We drove in silence for another hour. By sunset, we were somewhere in western Maryland. Stopped at a gas station that smelled like burnt coffee and cigarette regret. He bought a Gatorade and a pack of gum. Told the cashier to keep the change. Then sat back in the truck and stared out the window like the world was too loud. I asked him if he wanted to keep going or stop for the night. He said, "Whatever you want, son. I'm just the cargo." We found a motel just off the highway. One of those places that still uses keys instead of cards. Receptionists behind bulletproof glass. Continental breakfast, a joke told by the vending machine. 2 rooms. Side by side. I stood outside mine, key in the lock, when I heard his voice behind me. "Thanks for doing this." I turned. He was staring at the asphalt. Didn't look up. Didn't say it like he meant it. But I heard it. And for a second, just one, I remembered being 10 years old and holding his hand in a hospital hallway while he told the nurse, "He's with me. He's my boy." That was a long time ago. Before the lies. Before the drinks. Before the part where he forgot how to be a father, and I forgot how to believe him. That night, I lay in a motel bed staring at a popcorn ceiling and listening to the highway hum through the walls. And I wondered what the next 9 days would look like. If he'd make it. If I would. If there was still something in him worth saving, or if this was just about making peace with the fact that I'd already tried. I thought of the name of the place we were headed. Desert Light Recovery. And all I could think was, God, I hope there's still some light left in him. Even if it's just enough to get us through the next state line. The rain started halfway through the panhandle. Not the soft kind. Not the kind that makes you roll the window down and say, "Smells like summer." This was the kind that made the world blur. That made the white lines disappear under water. That made every minute behind the wheel feel like something you had to earn. My father was asleep. Or pretending. Hard to tell with him. He always had a talent for going limp when things got uncomfortable. We'd been on the road for 6 hours. No music. No real conversation. Just the sound of tires and time passing and him occasionally clearing his throat like he might say something and then deciding not to. I didn't push. Not yet. Around Charleston, I pulled off for gas. He stirred as we slowed down. Where are we? West Virginia. He rubbed his eyes, looked out at the wet pavement, the glowing red lights of the pumps. Thought we'd be further. We're making fine time. He didn't respond. Just got out, lit a cigarette he wasn't supposed to be smoking, and leaned against the truck like he owned it. I watched him through the window. Same hunched back. Same way he held the cigarette like a shield, not a habit. Same man who used to scream at me for not doing anything, while he chain-smoked through every argument. And suddenly I felt it, this pressure in my chest, like a scream I didn't know I'd been holding. I got out. Walked around to his side. You can't smoke in the truck, I said. He didn't look at me. Wasn't planning to. Good. He took one last drag and flicked it into the puddle. Then turned to me. You think I'm gonna ruin something just by breathing near it? And there it was. The spark. I didn't answer. Just walked back to the driver's side and got in. He followed. We drove in silence for 10 minutes. Then 20. Then he said real low. You still don't trust me. I almost laughed. Should I? He looked out the window. Then. I'm here, aren't I? You've been here before. But this time I stayed in the truck. And next time? He didn't answer. The storm hit us full about 40 miles outside Beckley. Wipers on full speed. Headlights bouncing off the wet road. Visibility down to nothing. I pulled off onto a shoulder, half a lane wide, barely enough room. We sat there. Rain pounding the roof. Truck shaking with wind. And he said, without looking at me, You ever think I didn't want to be like that? I turned toward him. What? Like that? A drunk. A ghost. A father who disappears when you need him. You were that. I know. Then what are we talking about? He exhaled. Long, shaky. And then, finally. You think I wanted to be the man who had to beg his son for a ride to rehab? I think you got real good at making your damage someone else's responsibility. His jaw tightened. And then he whispered. I know. That hit harder than I expected. Because he didn't fight it. Didn't defend himself. Just agreed. And somehow, that made it worse. Lightning flashed. For a moment, the cab lit up like a photograph. 2 men. Same nose. Same eyes. Both looking forward like they were waiting for the road to disappear. Then darkness again. And he said, Your mother told me to stay away from you after the second time. I swallowed. She told you? She begged me. Why didn't you listen? I did. For a while. Not long enough. He nodded. No. Not long enough. The rain slowed. We pulled back onto the road. His voice was quieter now. Something uncoiling. I used to drive out past your school sometimes. Just to see if I could spot you. You could have come in. I couldn't. You mean you wouldn't? No. I mean I couldn't. He turned to me. His face was wet, not from tears, from the condensation, the cold, the storm. But his eyes were raw. I couldn't handle the look you gave me. The one that said you already knew who I was. I didn't say anything. Because I didn't know. I'd known since I was 11 and found a bottle of gin hidden in the toilet tank. since I was 13 and waited outside a courthouse while my mother cried into her purse. Since I was 16 and he forgot my birthday, then called me 2 weeks later asking for money. I knew. And I still came. We found a motel off the highway. He paid this time. No words. Just a nod toward the clerk and a plastic key handed to me like it might be an apology. We didn't talk the rest of the night. But as I lay in bed, eyes on the ceiling fan spinning slow above me, I realized something. We weren't just driving through states. We were driving through versions of ourselves. And the further west we went, the harder it was to pretend we were the same men who left Pennsylvania. We hadn't planned to stop. But a wrong turn somewhere south of Charleston and a closed stretch of I-64 sent us weaving through old back roads. He offered to drive. I said no. The truth is, I don't think I could ever sleep while he was behind the wheel. Even sober. Especially sober. We passed a sign near dusk. Welcome to Burnett KY, Pop 3422. He leaned forward in his seat. You remember this place? He asked. I did. And I didn't. It was that kind of memory, sun-washed and soft around the edges, more feeling than fact. Yeah, I said. I remember. We were an hour off route. He looked at me like he was waiting for permission. Wouldn't mind a quick drive-through. Just to see it again. I almost said no. But then I remembered, this was the only place we'd ever almost worked. Burnett was where we tried. The summer I was 12. The year Mom sent me to live with him because she thought maybe, just maybe, if he had to be a father full-time, it might stick. He had a job then, warehouse work. A girlfriend. A rented trailer with a busted screen door, and a dog named Duke who only listened to me. For 3 months we played house. Breakfast from the gas station. TV dinners. Fishing on weekends. He even came to my Little League games. Sober. Twice. I remember thinking, maybe this is the beginning. I was wrong. But some part of me never let go of that summer. The town hadn't changed. Still just one main road. A diner, a bait shop, a barber with an open flag that looked 20 years faded. We pulled into a gravel lot beside the diner. He got out first. Stretched. Groaned. Said, "Damn, I haven't been back here since." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Inside, it smelled like coffee and grease. Same waitress. I recognized her immediately. Miss Donna. She looked at us. Tilted her head. And then her face lit up. Well, I'll be damned. If it isn't Richard Ellison. And is that your boy? I nodded. She hugged me like we'd spoken yesterday. You look just like you did back then. Taller, maybe. A little less sad in the eyes. I didn't know what to say to that. We sat in a booth by the window. Ordered grilled cheese and tomato soup. Coffee all around. The silence was different now. Not angry. Just full. He looked around the place like it might dissolve. Said, "You remember that corner table? That's where I told you we'd build that model airplane." I did. We never built it. The kit stayed in a plastic bag under the couch for weeks before I threw it away. He tapped the table with his knuckles. I thought I could change here. I thought you did, I said. He flinched. And for once, he didn't make an excuse. Didn't explain. Just looked down at his coffee like it might hold something redemptive. After we ate, we walked behind the diner to the lot where the trailer park used to be. Now it was gravel and silence. The trailer was gone. Duke was long gone. Even the swing I built from rope and a plank had vanished. Just space now. He stood there, hands in his pockets. It wasn't all bad, was it? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know. But because the truth was too layered. Because no, it wasn't all bad. But it wasn't enough. And that was the part that stung most, the almost of it all. That summer, I waited every day for him to keep a promise. He kept maybe 2. And still, I held on like that meant something. Still, I told my mom on the phone, he's doing better, I think. Still, I packed my bags slow at the end of August, hoping he'd say stay. He didn't. He barely looked up when I left. He turned to me now, years later, on the empty lot where we almost became a family, and said, "I was so scared back then." "Of what?" He looked away. "Of not knowing what to do with a kid who looked at me like I was worth something." I didn't realize I was crying until I felt the chill of the air on my face. We left before the sun dipped below the trees. Didn't say goodbye to Miss Donna. Didn't take a souvenir. Didn't need to. The town had already taken what it needed from us. Back in the truck, he said, "You ever think about that summer?" "All the time." "And?" "I wish I hadn't." He nodded. Didn't argue. Just sat with it. The highway swallowed us again. Lights blurred past. He turned on the radio, static at first, then an old country song I remembered from that summer. I almost changed the station. But I didn't. I let it play. Because sometimes, almost is enough to haunt you. But other times, it's just, what happened. Not a wound. Just a scar. And for the first time in the trip, I reached over. And turned the volume up. Just a little. By the time we hit Missouri, the novelty of the road had worn off. The miles stopped feeling like movement. Started feeling like weight. The truck creaked in the same places it always did. He slept in patches. I drove in longer ones. And the world blurred around us in a slow, gray smear of sameness. Gas stations. Vending machines. Coffees we didn't finish. And still, we hadn't said anything real since Kentucky. We stopped in Rolla. Small motel. Rooms that smelled like Lysol and last chances. I got him settled. Turned on the TV for him, some old Western rerun where everyone sounded like they were hiding something. He didn't say goodnight. I didn't either. Back in my room, my phone buzzed. Claire. Missed call. Then a text. "Everything okay?" Then another. "Can we talk?" That second one. It hit like a brick wrapped in something soft. I stepped outside and called. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey," I said. Silence. Then, "Is now a bad time?" "No," I said too quickly. "I'm alone." Another pause. Then her voice smaller. "Emma's sick." That was all it took. The guilt bloomed instantly. Like it had just been waiting for an excuse to break the surface. "What happened?" "Low-grade fever. Some stomach bug, maybe. She's been clingy all day. Should I come back?" That question hung too long. Then she said, "No. But I needed you to ask." I sat down on the curb. Cool air. Cracked concrete under my palms. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I know." Another silence. Not heavy. Just tired. Then, "You said this was for you." "It is. But it's still costing us." That one hurt. Because it was true. I'd told myself I could do both. Be the man who showed up for the one who never did. Be the man who stayed home for the ones who mattered now. But I was slipping. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just enough. One missed bedtime call. One unread story. One late text. And now, a sick daughter asking where Daddy was. And I was 3 states away, watching over a man who couldn't even watch over himself. "Do you regret saying yes?" Claire asked. I didn't answer. Because the answer changed every hour. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. Staring at the parking lot. Listening to the buzz of the vending machine. Trying not to imagine Emma curled up in bed, cheeks flushed, asking for me. And I thought, when does breaking this cycle become another cycle? When does being better than him become just another excuse for leaving? I went back to the room. He was still awake. Eyes on the ceiling. TV off. Room dim. "You all right?" I asked. He didn't look at me. Just said, "You've got a kid." "Right. Yeah." He nodded. "That's good." And then, quietly, "You're doing better than me already." I wanted to say not tonight. I wanted to say I'm screwing it up too. But I didn't. Because he needed that moment. And maybe I did too. I lay awake that night thinking about my daughter's breath when she's sleeping. The weight of her head on my shoulder. The way she calls me, Daddy, like it's a title she decided I earned. And I wondered, if I had to choose, right now, between the man in the next room and the little girl waiting at home, would I turn the truck around? Would I leave him at a bus stop and drive east until my heart stopped aching? I didn't know. And that scared me more than anything else on this road. The next morning, he was up before me. Showered. Dressed. Coffee waiting in a paper cup. He handed it to me like an apology. Didn't know how you take it, he said. Black's fine. We stood in silence. Then he asked, Everything all right back home? I stared at him. Then said, No. But it will be. And I hoped that was true. We got back in the truck. Turned west. The sun behind us. And the road ahead, still too long for answers. But maybe just short enough for a few more truths. The sky in Oklahoma stretched out like it wanted to swallow us. Flat roads. Mile after mile of nothing. Gas stations that looked abandoned even when the lights were on. We'd been quiet most of the day. Not a heavy silence. Just the kind that happens when you've run out of small talk and neither of you trusts what's waiting under the big talk. He'd been steady. No trembling hands. No snapping at the GPS. No half-lies that sounded like maybe truths. It was unnerving. Not because I didn't want him to be okay. But because I didn't know who I was if he was. Late afternoon, we pulled off at a faded green exit sign, Burgess Hollow. One diner. One bar. One gas station that had more lottery tickets than food. I filled up while he stretched his legs. He wandered toward the bar without saying anything. Not into it, just toward it. I watched him. The slow way he stared at the neon beer sign in the window like it was an old friend he didn't trust anymore. And then he walked away. Came back to the truck. Hands in pockets. Didn't speak. We drove off. But 20 miles later, I realized something. He wasn't chewing gum. Not the nicotine kind he'd been relying on since we left Pennsylvania. The one he clutched like a lifeline every time we passed a liquor store. I glanced at the center console. No wrapper. No pack. I said nothing. Not yet. But my stomach dropped. At the motel that night, I waited until he went into his room. Then I opened the trash bin outside his door. And there it was. A tiny bottle. Plastic. Empty. Still smelling like peppermint and poison. Airplane liquor. The kind you don't sip. The kind you hide. I didn't knock. Not at first. I just stood outside his door, fists clenched. Then, finally, 3 sharp knocks. A pause. Then, yeah? I opened the door without waiting. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, unlacing his boots. Didn't look surprised. Didn't look guilty either. That made it worse. I held the bottle up. He didn't flinch. Seriously? I said. He sighed. That wasn't. Don't lie. I'm not. Then what is it? He rubbed his eyes. It was 1. 1 is the start. He nodded. Didn't argue. Didn't defend. That made it worse, too. I threw the bottle in the trash, harder than I needed to. Turned toward the door. Then stopped. And said the thing I hadn't been able to say since we left. I don't know how to do this if you're actually trying. He looked up. Eyes tired. What do you mean? I stepped back, arms crossed, something ugly rising up in me. I mean, I built my life around you being the villain. And if you're not, if you change, then I don't know what that makes me. It was out before I could stop it. And there it was. My real fear. Not that he'd drink again. But that he wouldn't. That he'd stay sober. Be better. Turn into the man I needed 20 years too late. And I'd have to reckon with the bitterness I'd held onto like religion. Because if he changed, Then maybe I should have called more. Forgiven earlier. Shown up. He didn't speak. Just stared at me like he was looking at someone he almost recognized. Then he said, "You're not wrong." That stopped me. What? I built my whole life around being broken. And now I don't know what to do when the pieces start fitting again. He stood. Walked past me. Opened the mini fridge. Took out the other bottle. Yes, the other one. Held it up. Uncapped it. And poured it down the sink. Slow. Intentional. Didn't say a word. Just did it. Then looked at me. "You're not the only one afraid of what happens next." We didn't speak after that. I went back to my room. Sat on the floor. Back against the door. Breathing like I'd just run a mile with a weight on my chest. And I thought, what if he does make it? What if this time it's real? What do I do with all the anger I kept in my bones like proof? What happens when there's no one left to blame? I called Claire. Didn't say much. Just asked if Emma was okay. She said yes. Then asked if I was. I said, "He didn't drink." And she said, "Good." And I said, "No. It's terrifying." The tire blew just outside a town that didn't look like it was trying too hard to exist. One road. A diner. A gas station with a single pump and a hand-painted sign that said, "Mechanic, maybe." No cell service. No hurry. Just sun. The kind that makes everything feel ancient. Even us. I pulled off onto gravel, dust curling around the truck like smoke. We got out. He whistled low, inspecting the tire. "Shredded," he said. "You hit something?" "Nope. Just luck, I guess." He kicked at the rubber like that might teach it a lesson. I checked the back. No spare. Of course. The mechanic, Rudy, according to his name tag, was a man with a limp and a sunburn that looked permanent. "Can't get a new tire till morning," he said, like it wasn't up for discussion. I nodded. He pointed to the only motel in town, 3 doors down. "You'll want room 2. That one's got a working AC." The room smelled like evaporated bleach and someone else's story. 1 bed. 1 flickering lamp. No TV. He dropped his bag in the corner. Sat on the edge of the mattress and said, "Maybe it's a sign." I raised an eyebrow. "That we should slow down?" He nodded. "Been running a long time. Might not be the worst thing to sit still." We walked to the diner at sunset. Red dirt roads. Purple sky. The kind of quiet you only get in places too far from anything to fake noise. He pointed to a porch across the street. "You remember that?" I looked. Didn't. "That's where we sat the night your mom called," he said. "After your first broken arm." I stopped walking. "You called her back?" He shook his head. "No. I just listened to the message on the payphone and sat there. You were asleep. I told myself I'd call in the morning. And I didn't." He looked at the porch like it was an old wound. She didn't leave another message after that. Inside the diner, we sat at a booth near the window. Ordered green chili stew and iced tea. The waitress called him Han and me sugar. And I think we both needed that more than we realized. After we ate, we sat a while longer. Didn't talk. Didn't leave. Just existed. In the same space. Without expectation. Later, back at the motel, I sat on the front step while he smoked. "Stars above us like pinholes in a black sheet," he said. "You ever think maybe this is enough?" I looked over. This? You and me. The road. Trying. Failing. Trying again. I considered it. Then said, "Maybe it doesn't have to be enough. Maybe it just has to be something." He nodded. Flicked the ash. Then said, "I used to think redemption was a finish line. But maybe it's just a place you stop along the way." That night I didn't sleep much. But I didn't spiral either. I lay in bed listening to the hum of the AC and the rhythm of his breath in the room beside mine. And I felt, not at peace, but at rest. The next morning, Rudy had the tire changed by 9 a.m. He refused payment. Said, "You look like a man who's already paid enough." I didn't argue. Just shook his hand and said thank you. Back on the road, the desert opened up again. Nothing in front of us. Nothing chasing behind. Just heat waves, and highway, and two men who'd finally learned how to be quiet without making it feel like punishment. Not all repair happens on the move. Some of it happens in the places where you're forced to wait. Where you stop expecting the past to apologize. And just let the present breathe. The sign came into view just past 4 p.m. Desert Light Recovery. Where the work begins. White letters on a sand-colored stone slab, surrounded by succulents too stubborn to die. He sat up straighter in his seat. Didn't say anything. Didn't have to. The tension told me everything. Hands pressed together. Jaw locked. Eyes forward like he was afraid to blink. We turned onto the long gravel drive. No gates. Just a winding path flanked by wind-bent trees and a silence that made my ears ring. The building itself looked like it had grown out of the land, low and wide, adobe and glass. Welcoming in a way that felt earned, not forced. I pulled into the front lot. Cut the engine. And for a moment neither of us moved. "You made it," I said. He nodded. But his hand stayed on the door handle like it wasn't ready to believe me. "Should I come in?" I asked. He looked at me. Not like a son. Not like a stranger. Just a man, asking another man if he's needed. "I think I got it from here," he said. We sat there for another beat. And then he said, "I was waiting for this to feel like the end." I turned to him. "And? It doesn't. Just feels like another beginning I might not finish." His voice cracked a little. Then he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a slip of folded paper. Held it out. I took it. Opened it. Inside, a phone number. His new sponsor's name. His intake counselor's extension. The center's mailing address. "I don't expect anything," he said. "But if you ever feel like sending a letter, I'd like that." I nodded. Didn't say yes. Didn't say no. Just folded the paper again. Slipped it into my wallet behind a photo of Emma. Then I said the thing I didn't know I needed to say until it came out of me. "I don't forgive you." He blinked. "Okay. But I'm not waiting any more for you to earn it." He nodded. And this time, there was no argument. "No. But I was sick." "No. You don't understand." Just a man holding his choices. And letting me hold mine. He stepped out of the truck. Slid his duffel from the back seat. Walked toward the entrance. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. And I didn't follow. I sat there a while. Watching the wind shift the dust. The sun casting long shadows over the red clay. And I asked myself, what do I owe him now? A call every Sunday? A birthday card? A seat at the table next Thanksgiving? The answer was quieter than I expected. Nothing. But maybe, if I wanted to, something. That's the thing about healing no one talks about. It's not a debt. It's a choice. Every single day. When I finally turned the key, the engine rumbled awake like it was relieved. I eased the truck onto the road. Didn't look in the rearview. Didn't need to see the building get smaller. He was in there. Doing the work. And I was out here. Doing mine. The desert swallowed me up again. Dust trailing behind like a ghost that didn't want to leave. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running. I was just leaving. Without shame. Without anger. Without guilt dragging behind me like a chain. The truck felt different without him in it. Not lighter. Not heavier. Just quieter. The kind of quiet you notice when the static is finally gone. When the tension in your jaw eases, and you realize it's been there for days, maybe years. I drove the first 2 hours without music. Just the road. Just the hum of the engine. Just the kind of stillness you don't get when someone else is sitting 3 feet away, carrying a lifetime of things unsaid. Somewhere outside Holbrook, I saw hawks circling above the desert. It hovered in a wide arc, barely moving, riding the invisible. I pulled over, stepped out of the truck, leaned against the hood and watched it for a while. And I thought, what if healing isn't a direction? What if it's a loop? A wide, circling thing you learn to ride without needing to land. That night, I slept in the truck. Didn't bother with a motel. Parked at a rest stop in New Mexico, reclined the seat, and listened to the wind push dust across the concrete. It reminded me of when I was 16, running away from him for the first time. Sleeping in parking lots. Pretending I had a plan. Calling Claire on a payphone at 1 a.m., not even sure why I dialed. She picked up then. She always did. I crossed into Texas just after dawn. Stopped at a diner that served coffee like punishment, and eggs that could have passed for chalk. But the waitress smiled. Called me sweetheart. And I didn't realize how much I missed being seen by someone without history attached to it. Each state passed like a chapter one wasn't reading closely. Texas to Arkansas. Arkansas to Tennessee. Tennessee to West Virginia. The truck moved. And so did something inside me. Not big. Not dramatic. Just a loosening. Like old knots finally giving in to time. Somewhere near Nashville, I found the letter again. The one he gave me in Arizona. The one with the phone number. The name of his sponsor. His address. I stared at it at a red light. Wondered if I'd ever use it. Wondered if I had to. Wondered what kind of son I wanted to be now that I wasn't playing defense anymore. Back on the highway, I thought about Claire. Emma. Home. Not as a destination. But as a decision. Not the place I was going to. But the thing I was ready to fully return to. Because part of me hadn't been there. Not really. Not while I was still chasing closure. At a truck stop in Virginia, I bought a postcard. One with a cartoon bear in hiking boots and a pun about mountains. Wrote one line on the back. Still moving. Still trying. Hope you are too. Didn't sign it. Didn't send it either. Just folded it. Tucked it in the glove box next to the receipts and the GPS. By the time I crossed into Pennsylvania, the leaves had started to change. Not fully. Just enough to remind me that seasons move forward, even when we don't. I got home late. Lights off. House quiet. I stood at the front door for a long moment. Not because I was afraid to go in. But because I didn't want to rush it. I wanted to remember what this felt like. Coming home with nothing left in my pockets but the choice to stay. Claire met me in the hallway. No questions. Just arms. And for the first time since Arizona, I let myself cry. Not because of what I lost. But because of what I didn't. I checked on Emma before bed. She was curled up in her blanket, one hand flopped above her head like she was still reaching for something. I sat beside her for a minute. Watched her breathe. Whispered, "You don't have to carry any of it." She stirred but didn't wake. I kissed her forehead and left the door cracked. Just enough. That night, I lay in bed with my hand resting on Claire's leg. Not needing anything. Just present. And I thought, maybe I don't need to forgive him all at once. Maybe it's enough that I didn't hand him the keys to my anger again. Maybe it's enough that I drove back. On my own terms. Some stories don't end. They fade. They echo. But if you're lucky, they stop running your life. End of Part 8, The Drive Back. I didn't expect the letter. Not because I didn't think he could write one. But because part of me had already boxed that chapter up and shelved it in the place where grief goes when it doesn't quite belong to the dead. It was a Sunday. Mid-morning. The house still soft with sleep. Claire was in the kitchen, barefoot, humming a tune she never quite finished. Emma was on the floor, building a city out of blocks that kept falling sideways. I was sipping coffee from the chipped mug she got me for Father's Day. The one that said, #OneDad, in fading blue letters like the world wasn't always trying to test it. The mail slot clicked. Usually I don't get up right away. Let it pile up. Let the wind decide which envelopes get noticed. But something nudged me. Not a voice. Not a sign. Just a feeling. I opened the door. One envelope. No return address. Just my name. In shaky cursive. I sat down at the table. Held the envelope like it might burn. Claire looked over. You okay? I nodded. Then shook my head. Then shrugged. Letter, I said. From him? I nodded again. She didn't press. Just placed her hand on mine and gave it a little squeeze before going back to the eggs. The paper was thin. Folded twice. Unlined. Just 3 sentences. I'm still here. Day 23. It's hard, but I don't hate myself today. Hope you're well. Dad? No punctuation at the end of the last line. Just a quiet stop. Like he ran out of words and decided not to force more. I read it again. And again. And each time, it did something I didn't expect. It softened something. Not a lot. Not dramatically. But just enough. Like the first warm breeze after winter. The kind that doesn't promise spring, but hints at it. I didn't cry. Didn't feel angry. Just sat there, sipping coffee, rereading the letter, thinking. This is new. Not the words. The shape of them. The way they didn't ask for anything. Didn't manipulate. Didn't plead or perform or pretend. Just existed. Day 23. That meant he made it 3 weeks. 23 mornings without a drink. 23 nights with whatever demon sat at the foot of his bed. 23 chances to leave, and 1 reason not to. I didn't know what that reason was. Maybe it was the letter I never sent. Maybe it was the desert. Maybe it was nothing at all. Didn't matter. He was still there. That was enough. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer next to Emma's drawings and the receipts I couldn't throw out. I didn't reply. Not yet. But I didn't throw it away. And that felt like a beginning. Or at least, a soft refusal to close the door. Later, while Emma napped and Claire read on the couch, I sat at the table again and stared out the window. Thought about what it means to stay. Not just physically. But emotionally. To stay open. To stay reachable. To stay yourself, even when you've spent a life building armor against that exact thing. He was trying. That much was clear. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't meet that with suspicion. I met it with breath. 1 in. 1 out. And a little more space in my chest than there was before. That night I wrote a letter. Didn't send it. Didn't even sign it. Just wrote. Glad you don't hate yourself today. That counts for something. I don't know what comes next. But I know what came before. And I'm still here too. Then I folded it. Tucked it into the same drawer. Not a reply. Not yet. Just preparation. In case I ever decided to answer. The house settled around me. Emma dreaming. Claire asleep. The quiet not pressing in, but stretching out. And for the first time, I thought maybe I could carry this part of him. Not as a wound. But as a shape. Something that lives beside me. Not inside me. And that was enough. For today. I don't think there was a single moment where I knew it had changed. No switch flipped. No sunrise that looked particularly redemptive. No letter or phone call that unlocked anything magic. But the mornings started to feel different. Like I didn't wake up in defense anymore. Like the armor had loosened without me noticing. Emma spilled orange juice across the kitchen table last week. Claire was in the shower. It soaked through the paper towel roll and bled into a drawing she'd made for school, stick figures with big heads and crooked smiles and a sun that took up most of the page. I paused. Waited for the anger to rise. It didn't. I laughed. Just laughed. Wiped it up, kissed her forehead, and said, "Let's make a better one." And we did. I've been walking more. Not for steps. Not for heart rate. Just because it feels good to put my body into motion without running away from something. There's a trail behind our neighborhood, wooded, narrow, lined with those quiet birds whose names I'll never learn. I take Emma there on weekends. We throw rocks in the creek and name the trees. She calls one Grandpa Tree. She doesn't know why. She just does. Claire's different, too. Not because I changed, but because I stayed. There's a version of me she knew she couldn't count on. Not physically, I was always around. But emotionally, I was still somewhere in a truck, tracking a man who couldn't give me what I needed. Now I'm here. Saturdays in the yard. Dishes without being asked. Phone left on the counter during dinner. She noticed before I did. The letter came again. Same envelope. Same shaky hand. This time it said, *day 41. I keep waiting for it to feel like it's mine. Some days it does. I planted something in the garden. A pepper plant. Not sure why. But it's alive. Thought you might want to know. Dad*. I didn't write back. But I smiled. Out loud. And I whispered, good. Last week, I moved the old toolbox from the garage into the basement. Cleaned the rust. Reorganized the wrenches. Threw away the ones too bent to hold shape. I kept the one he gave me. The small one, with the chipped black handle and initials etched into the side. I don't use it much. But I keep it where I can see it. Not because it was his. But because it reminds me that things can be held without being clung to. Emma asked about him once. We were watching a cartoon, and one of the characters had a grandpa with a cane and a growly voice. She turned to me and said, do I have one of those? I swallowed. Said, you did. Where is he? He's trying to be better. She thought about that. Then nodded. Okay. That was it. And somehow, that was everything. I don't know what comes next. Maybe I'll write him back someday. Maybe we'll sit on a porch when he hits day 100 and talk about the weather and tomatoes and all the things we don't need to explain anymore. Or maybe not. Maybe the road was the thing. Maybe that was all it needed to be. And the rest, the letters, the possibility, is just grace. Not an obligation. But an offering. I've stopped checking the rearview. Literally. Metaphorically. I drive slower now. Roll the windows down. Let Emma choose the playlist. She likes the songs that don't make sense. I like the way she dances in the back seat, unbothered by structure. We're building a treehouse. Claire and me. Emma with a hammer she's not supposed to have. I let her nail in one crooked piece of wood. She called it her corner. Said no one could take it away. I told her they won't. Not this time. There's no happy ending here. No bow. No final hug in a parking lot. Just a man standing in his kitchen, coffee in hand, daughter twirling in the next room, thinking. This is enough. Not perfect. Not clean. Not earned. Just enough. Because I'm not chasing anymore. I'm here. For the rest of the way.